Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through Scripture for February the 1st. And your readings for today came out of wrapping up Exodus chapter 13, moving into Exodus 14, and the first part of Exodus chapter 15. And also you were reading, finishing out Matthew chapter 21, reading the first half of Psalm 26, and Proverbs chapter 6, 16 through 19. So, a lot of times when I read the encounters of the Israelites in Exodus, I'm really amazed at their disbelief of God at times. I mean, they go from seeing these incredible miracles that God does, and it's like they instantly forget when some difficult time happens. And I look at them and I often think, man, you guys you're missing it. Then I realize that I miss it. I mean, I do. I'm the same way. I forget about the glorious things that God does in my life personally, and in the life of my family. When things get tough, things get difficult. I'll go through ebbs and flows on my own faith walk with Christ, and so when I read the encounter found here in Exodus, when we look at the parting of the Red Sea, that is a pretty amazing in Exodus 14. That's an amazing story, and it really is. But if you look at it in verse 11. Or first verse 10, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done by bringing us out of Egypt?" They basically start complaining. It was the grandpa grape from VeggieTales. We were better off in Egypt. I mean, it's just like these people forget. I mean, remember, they've just witnessed the plagues of Egypt. They've seen the Nile turn to blood. They've seen pestilence. They've seen fire rain from the sky. They saw the Passover. They were a part of the Passover. They were able to witness God's power. And yet, as soon as something else difficult came along, they forgot. They forgot who God is. We do this. I do this all the time. I forget who God is. And I look again and I say, okay, God, give me a new sign. Give me a new wonder. Show me something spectacular. This was the reason why we read a few weeks ago that Jesus left a town, because, he's like, there's no belief. There's no faith here. They won't believe no matter what I do. It wasn't that Jesus couldn't perform the miracles. It's that Jesus recognized the futility of performing those miracles. And we see his encounter in Matthew chapter 21 with these leaders, these Pharisees and these Sadducees, and they're asking Jesus questions. And they're not asking Jesus questions because they're seeking truth. They're asking questions because they want to trap Jesus, because they want to prove that they know better than Jesus, that they are the ones. And so, then they look for signs and things, and when they ask questions, they're full of unbelief. And so then Jesus passes judgment on them. In Matthew 21, in verses 28 all the way down through 40, he gives two parables. And each one of those parables, the Pharisees were smart enough to recognize, and it says it down there in verse 45, that they heard these parables, they perceived he was speaking about them, but they didn't get the parables. Well, what are the parables? Well, the first one is talking about two sons, and how a man went to his two sons, and the first son he said, Go do what I tell you to do. And the son goes, "Nope, I won't." But then he changes his mind and does it. And then the other one says, "Yeah, I'll go do it," and then doesn't do it. And so which one is the religious leaders, the Pharisees? Well, it's the second ones. The ones that are, as Jesus says, whitewashed tombs. These are people that will say that they honor God with their lips, but their actions show something completely different. They're the son that says, "Yeah, I'll go do it," but then they don't actually do anything that follows God. And then Jesus gives them a parable that talks about all of the prophets that the people of Israel have rejected. I mean, when you look at the history of the prophets, you see that they did not have a good history, that a number of them were destroyed, were killed, were stoned to death, had horrible endings. Jeremiah had a rough ending. Jeremiah was thrown in a cistern for a period of time. I mean, a lot of the prophets had really difficult situations. So in Matthew 21:33 through 40, He talks about how all of these, he uses the parable of a master who sends tenants to go, basically to go and collect what's his from people that were just kind of underneath his rule. And he talks about how each one of these servants would go and they would humiliate them, or they would kill them, and they would stone them and beat them and all of these different things. This is Jesus telling these leaders, hey, you did this same thing. And then the son came. And what did you do to the son? You killed him. And so Jesus said, I am the cornerstone. I am the one that the builders, you, rejected, and now I am coming to do the Lord's doing. This is pretty amazing stuff, and it's pretty harsh condemnation. But I think it's good for us to remember that we don't need to be asking God for signs and wonders just for the sake of asking. We need to be asking God to soften our hearts, to not become like these guys, for him to open our eyes and help us to see where it is that he's actually moving and be reminded of it, to not forget the miracles that God does in our life. Okay, that's it. Have a blessed one. We'll see you next time.